Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for taking your time today to join us for an engaging dialogue between two distinguished artists, Raymond and Ian Wu. And both artists are renowned for their expertise in painting. Raymond and Ian are also esteemed educators, as most of you might know. I see most of you are also students of Raymond. So Raymond teaches at NAFA and Ian at LaSalle College of the Arts. Yeah. But before I continue, can everybody hear me clearly? Is it too echoey? Okay, so in this session, we will have the privilege of hearing from Raymond about his creative processes for primordial patterns, while both artists will also engage in a thoughtful discussion on their respective art practices. So I'm Melvin from Art Porters. Nice to meet you, and I'm honored to moderate this discussion. So we encourage you to share your thoughts and questions at the end of the session during Q&A. So without further ado, we'll begin the dialogue and gain some deeper insights into the perspectives of these two talented artists. Okay, so Raymond and Ian, I'm going to throw the first question first. As both of you utilize abstraction in your work, can you share with us what's your individual approach to abstraction? Or what is your creative process like when you start a painting? Yeah, so maybe
I think my background comes from drawing as a starting point. I never really sort of like painting was always a bit messy for me, so drawing allowed me to deal with a kind of cleaner way of arranging shapes. And abstraction for me is always dealing with kind of shapes, lines, dots, pretty basic elements. I don't want to go into color yet because I think color is always a bit complicated to talk about. And also, if you are talking about painting, then for me, the idea of space, and space can be close, can be far, can be in between. Like, sometimes you're not sure whether it's front or back.
okay, so yeah, when you say space, it reminds me a bit of music as well, because there's this saying that actually music lies in the silence, and similarly in terms of painting and with all the shapes and forms, there's also rhythm. And when you say space, I can see it in Raymond's work as well. Like there are certain gaps and rhythms or certain forms that will lead your eyes to view the painting, and some of them they overlap each other, and the viewer can just sort of track through the motions. Yeah. So for Raymond, what about patterns? What are patterns to you? Since in this exhibition we can see that there are a lot of recurring patterns in the work, and we can also see from the paperworks that there are some cutouts and stencils. So what are these patterns to you, and can you share with us a little bit more about your process?
What should I say? I was not labeled as an abstraction artist, when I was in London, living there for a while, until I actually come to Singapore and I started teaching. So that's how my name using the label as an abstraction artist come into being. A lot of times for me when I make paintings or cutout or anything, but I don't think of the abstraction so much. I just think of the form, the lines, how the two form meet, and then it become another dimension. It's kind of like, the way into the new space. For the images here, a lot of recurring kind of images. I do look at nature and I will do a quick outline of the shapes. And just now, Ian mentioned that there's something like the space. There's one in the front, there's one in the middle, there's one in the back. So for some of my cutout images, I will draw out the shapes. And kind of I will put 3 images will become one shape. And then once I start to do the cutout, I'll have some template. The template actually I can kind of like working and repeat the same images. I can kind of not imprint, means like I will roll color on the template on the front as well as at the back. So in the way I'm hopefully cut some in the front, cut some in the back, it will create some new images for can play with more of the compositions. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, so what Raymond has explained, so from my understanding is that Raymond, he works in a really spontaneous manner. That actually one work itself can generate a lot more ideas, and Raymond is also a firm believer that we do not really need a lot of expensive equipment or kind of to resource to in order to create great art, because as cliche as it sounds, all the resources are already out there. Especially for Raymond, he referenced a lot of nature. So all these shapes and cutouts you see, they are extracted from his observation of natural landscapes and also source images. I think Raymond mentioned to me one of his favorite source image to refer to is also sort of like Chinese paintings. And you start to see patterns and shapes being formed in the cutouts. Some of them are more figurative to the audience. For example, like triangles, you can see quite a lot of triangular forms, but they are not necessarily figurative in a sense. It's not a mountain or anything. It could be a negative space between the scenery that he has chose to put it there. So, of course, one work can generate a new work, but he can also use another stencil to lay on top of an existing one, and then use a pen to draw over a new shape, and you get a whole new work out of it. Yeah, so you can actually see a continuation. There's a continuous process in his practice, not just within the canvas or the work itself, but in the whole series. There's some sort of continuity. The source image or the source material or the form tends to get more and more abstract as he continues to build on his process. So in speaking of continuous process, Ian, your doctorate research was based on the ability of abstract painting to express notions of a continuous presence. So can you elaborate on this in reference to maybe some of Raymond's paintings?
To me, the idea of continuous presence, not process, I would say is the idea of presence. That is, presence is like something that's appearing before you, and it stays there. Of course, I got that idea because of that contrast between film, moving image, and looking at a painting. And to me, one of the great things about looking at drawings and paintings is stillness, because it doesn't move. And if you spend time with it, it's really about optical, you're looking around. And depending on the work, you could stay quite a long time, or you can just not want to look at it within. Yeah. So it depends on the work, and I think there's something about that idea of space making in a painting, which I think happens here as well. The artist is always, I guess also for Raymond, he's trying to build up. To me, I think he's kind of like built up a kind of some kind of distance for the viewer. And I guess the negative space, if there is any, I think again it's quite complicated simplification here. I say empty space, but actually some people may think about the idea of the whiteness surrounding the so-called objects. But then there's also this idea where that negative space sometimes has got stuff in it. There's things, or it's kind of packed. Yeah. And to me, the idea of continuous presence is almost like a still image, but there is a kind of, for lack of a better term, there's a kind of movement happening. But I prefer to use the word suspension. That means it's like it just hangs there. It's like it's going to do something we're not sure it's going to do next. That's my interpretation of what I desire, what I want to see. If you ask me to refer to some of these works here, I think there are elements of some of the work where they have this aspect of maybe a floating quality. So maybe the idea of floating is connected to ideas about suspending an image. So it's more to do with creating an image and a composition where there is enough space in it that you can stay with the work and maybe even interpret where it might be going.
Thanks, Ian. So, very interesting because when you talk about space for the viewers to look at, I suddenly thought of not just within the painting itself, like the paints, but also contextually speaking, the form. That do you think this is for Raymond as well? Do you think that the audience would take a longer time to look at the artwork if the forms are more abstract? So they don't form a conclusion straight in your mind and then stop there, but perhaps take a longer time to have different interpretations and therefore maintain that sort of presence.
I think you think about normally we look at the painting. If you go to the exhibition or National Gallery or whatever, you mostly you walk past, maybe look at the painting maybe 3 seconds or 5. And a lot of time we look at the statement and then you also move on. Paintings, it kind of supposed to slow you down, by looking at the form and how the texture being made, what the artist is trying to say, and how the color not match. It's supposed to kind of slow you down, and the more you look, the more you see the kind of situation, and then the more you get hooked, the more you look at the side of the painting as well, the top to bottom, left to right, and it's supposed to be the artist like almost like every single corner or stroke. It's just the intention of the artist. So it's there for you to kind of like slow down and kind of build up your seeing.
Yeah, and Ian, do you have any input on how should we generally approach a painting, to any starting points to look at? Because as you mentioned, in a painting, everything exists all at once. So how does, what are your thoughts?
In some paintings, not all. It's very hard to talk about. I mean, it's complicated because we are kind of like, at some point we'll be generalizing also. There's no recipe about how one should look at the work. Sometimes I enter a space and it's like, the work is like 10 meters away so far, but it catches my eye and I walk towards. And some works I look at it, I I mean, when I was younger, there were works where I would see and I got so upset, because I thought it was very poorly made. But then it bothered me so much for 1 week, I couldn't sleep. And then I went back to look at it, and I fell in love with it. It's a very, it changes from work to work. I mean, works are like people. There are different kinds of people. Yeah, that's what I would and maybe since Raymond talked about the idea of working in slowness, right? I think speed is also very important. There are some things that are very fast. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there are some books that are fast because maybe the artist is kind of influenced by the way we look at digital images or information, not just images, but maybe the way information is being downloaded, so it affects the body, the mind. So they end up wanting that in the work. So there's always two opposite approaches for a lot in terms of chemical, so the way we read images.
When you mentioned about speed, I think it's something really contemporary today in terms of how we receive, take in information. So everything is starting to become more digitized today. Like even YouTube, videos have been shortened to YouTube Shorts. We live in a time of instant gratification, and a lot more people are more. Perhaps it's the kind of environment or society we live in where it's really objective, result-driven. That process seems to be sometimes understated in art making. So I'd like to ask both Raymond and Ian, for you personally, because there's no right or wrong, right? What do you think is more important to you in your own practice? Is it the process, the outcome, or are both equally sort of important?
It changes all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're making. I'm thinking about exhibitions that show processes and exhibitions that show finish. Perhaps that would give the audience a better understanding of how these two ideas work. And processes is quite personal. Of course, the finished work can be also very personal as well. And I say process is personal because it's sometimes you're looking at a group of things that are being shown, that could be sketches and everything, but they tend to be, maybe I will use the word unfinished in that sense. Again, it's very problematic when I use this term because I'm generalizing. So, fragments of thoughts, things that are, I call it false starts. False starts means you try something, then it's all like, kind of like, got stuck. You don't really know how to move forward, and then you just abandon it. So to me, that's also a process that you kind of abandon it. Maybe you can return to it like once in a couple of years. So to me, processes are always very interesting to see. But I guess to curate that would be a separate question. To answer that question, to me, it's not about. I can't see which is more important, but they have a context. You need to find the context for it. Then they become important.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the process is kind of like you taste out the idea. In the end, it can be finished also. That's why the difficulty we are in now right now. So we think it's finished, other people might think it's not finished. So for me, it depends how far you want to finish it, and how much you want to leave it to the viewer to finish it for you. And sometimes, if you get too far, the whole thing, the process finished, become finished. I think there's no more process in it, and sometimes not necessarily it's going to be the good one also. Yeah, so it's very hard kind of put the question. It's going to be case by case, and it's going to be depend on your mood on the day also, depend what things you use also, depend how much you want to keep also. So anytime those things left over, process you think is terrible, and you can paint it on top and continue to move on to the next stage.
Thanks, Raymond. So actually, I've heard a lot from your students, both past and current students, that you are known for your experimentation. That, like what you say, sometimes artists may encounter artist block, and then you may stop the work over there, leave it for some time, and then go back to it. But for you, do you think you encounter this a lot? Because from your processes, I feel like the way you can generate ideas for yourself, it's almost quite infinite. Like, do you ever feel like you get stuck for a long period of time, or is it not really a kind of problem in your overall process?
For me, I don't use a sketchbook to begin with. I use normally a lot of A4 size paper, and then when I paint, sometimes I don't think it's a process. I think it's making maybe it's the initial stage, and to put something on, see what it's like. So then, if you got more than one pieces oil at one time, and maybe some you can take further, and then the rest get a little bit as a process. And for me, those are A4 size are almost like my sketches. And because I like to put them all, display them all on the floor, have a look at which one work better with which one. Sometimes you put two together, they actually work with each other. So sometimes the process itself can be finished. If you take them apart again, individually it will become very raw. When you put the next one together again, it will become more finished. So again, it depends. Yeah, and for me, the process is, it can generate images all the time. As long as you try this one out, you try it out, it will continue kind of like generate more and more for you to kind of decide which one you should keep. And then for me, when I have so many, then I'll have to think about maybe cut one out, put on the other one, cut two together, put three together, kind of see how it will become. And time also process, unless you decide it is finished. Again, maybe you go back another days to work on top again.
I think you used the term generate quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm quite curious about that. It's like, when you say generate, it's almost like something would impact something else.
Yeah.
And is that, I would think that could be the shape or that, or something contrasting that it wants to trigger, It's almost like you are like producing a kind of offspring, or kind of, it's like a system that's, you are trying to find a system. Can you talk a bit about that?
For me, when I study something, there's no image in mind. So unless I got more than one piece of A4, start cutting them out, form something. And what I meant is like generate, because sometimes the form itself can make it bigger, make it smaller, and then the form itself can, try out different color on another piece of paper, and then come to words, you kind of like cut them out. Cut them out also, you can also cut the shape against the other shape also, and you also generate another images.
Yeah, I like the idea that you say you cut them out, that means it's like, it doesn't work. You cut them into small pieces, then they may influence something else.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So Ian, do you relate to Raymond's process in that regard of generation in your own painting processes? Do you see any sort of correlating aspects to what Raymond is doing?
Actually, seeing some of this making me want to do some collage, which I've not done for many years. So that's one thing I would say. But I think because collage is very different. Yeah, collage is like the way I see Raymond works is different from mine because I'm applying paint one after another. You know, and sometimes, but he's like, to put it in a very simple place, he's got stuff lying around, and I mean, there's another question I want to ask him: how he arranges his cutouts. Does he arrange by color, tone, or whatever? That's one. I have this thing in mind, because when you mix colors, sometimes you have a set. We arrange them. Everybody has a way to arrange them, so you can take it and then make a decision. So for me, I think that's quite a major difference. The ways one is applied on top, the other one is applied. And it's like for collage, you're like taking something and then just placing it there. You can, if it doesn't work, you can just remove it, you know. You paint once you apply it, it's like, oh shit, it doesn't work, then either you wipe it off, but when you wipe it off, you know, it can either stick there, or you can shift it around and then.
Share more about the how you
How I arrange it. Again, this is again for me, a lot of things I also prepare some background color also, by the way. Yeah, I just I create a lot of different textures. Sometimes I kind of like roll certain color on the piece of wood. Then I will imprint for me as a backdrop. Then I got some color, and I will kind of like spray water on the surface and then lift it out and then get a different texture. And then once I got those things in place, what I can see, and I will thought, okay, maybe this green go well with the purple. But my mind is saying that, you know, oh, maybe this one go well with it. But sometimes it doesn't work one. So you have to really kind of cut it out and arrange it, then you know it doesn't work. Or sometimes maybe it works but too simple. So and then I may have to stencil another color on it. And then what Ian is saying, like after you apply another layer, the whole thing will disappear already because you cannot get to the actual the image in your head already. So you need to move on and tackling another stage. For me, color that's actually quite important for my work. I deal with colors, but not because I plan it out. I want you to look at the color on my table. Those colors I have got, so I have to use it against with other colors. I don't go out to shop, I buy this complimentary, no. I go to the shop, sometimes I buy it just anyhow the colors. And then you get to the studio, I have to deal with it. And the thing have to give me the problem before I can kind of like think the work is finished. Yeah.
So to double on what Raymond has shared, because you told me before that sometimes I asked you the question, when do you think a painting is finished? Because for like painters, you can keep going and going and going. At what point do you stop? Sometimes it can get too tunnel vision, and you shared with me that although you don't have a final image in mind for what you're doing, but sometimes before you even paint, you will start creating parameters for yourself, creating conditions. So once again, it's sort of reducing your own resources to allow yourself to be more creative with limitations. Like for, I think these two big canvases on both the left and right, you mentioned to me that you were using two very difficult type of paint to use, like metallic and fluorescent. So I think that's like one example of what you have shared. So I think my next question is for both of you who are really experienced painters. What do you think, in contemporary painting right now? What can be done to push the boundary of painting, like not in terms of narrative, but in painting itself, in terms of color or process?
I noticed you passed the phone to me. Actually, I don't know. Really, this question I never really think of the term contemporary. I sometimes I mean, for me, contemporary means today. But today is like after after tonight it's over already. So it's so I don't know what is the meaning of contemporary. I know sometimes some students I teach, so sometimes they use this term. I always tell them, hey, can we use this term because I don't really understand where are we going. So let's talk about what we can make, talk about things that we can see. And I guess for me it's back to the idea of processes. Maybe to answer this question, what's the process for every artist is really almost a kind of trade secret sometimes. You know, you read too much, either you confuse people or people will just take it away. You know? Yeah. But the thing is that this idea of the studio is very important for artists. I'm sure Raymond, it's very important for you to then take the space to test things. So I think to answer that question is about the way you test things and what you desire to push forward. Or not forward, maybe it's backwards. Maybe some people don't want to move forward. They love the good old days, you know. They love your history. So I think it really depends on what the artist desire to do. I think there's always a space for all kinds of work. Then of course, you know, whether it's good or bad, that's another story. That's a really idea of taste.
Raymond, you have an answer?
It's hard to answer.
Yeah, it's hard to answer. So, to bring this discussion back into the context of the exhibition, so one realization from Raymond's practice is, of course, what Ian has highlighted, the word generative. And today we really live in a time where, you know, artificial intelligence is quite predominant. We live in a very interesting time where complex visuals can be generated easily with single prompts. And from there, I think both artists have also discussed which is more important, you know, the process or the final outcome. Because with AI, of course, you can use it however you want, and there's to certain degrees also. However, there are also people who use it completely just to generate an outcome instead of using it as a tool to help them in art making. And I think I come across a website or article that Raymond shared with me, and it stated that, you know, for someone to fully rely on AI to generate an artwork, the user is not necessarily creating art, but in fact, it's avoid making art, because there's that whole process of human cognition that is not being applied if you surrender 100% to AI. So back to the question. So with the predominance of artificial intelligence and the capability to generate all these complex visuals, as artist educators, what do you think, or how do you think this might affect the role of an artist or painter in today or in the near future?
You want to go first? Yeah, you using AI to generate images?
Our response question about is about solar.
Okay.
Raymond, do you think that your work, you are almost trying to are you trying to be a machine? Can you be a machine? Because the reason why I asked the question, because it seems like you're cutting out and you're trying to use repeated patterns, and by doing that, I feel that you're trying to, like or better, turn back to the word, generate some kind of rhythm, but because it's repeated, right? It has less of the human touch because of the cropping. When you have human touch, where you put a mark on it, the cropping always stops it. So there's always a repeat of that cropping. So it's almost like a combination of the human touch, but most of it, I realize that you are using the idea of cropping to produce space within space. That's what so is that something, so I will refer back to the question about AI.
I didn't think about that question about me being a machine yet. I think that would be quite interesting, like just to think so much. But for me, I think even though I do the cutout, I still allow a leeway. When the squid paint on it, I still allow the paint to go around the edges, for example the blue one. And they will imprint from another piece of paper. And then I will, kind of like when it's too much paint, I will also use another piece of paper to imprint up. So, for me, the way I work is, I like the way it's quite spontaneous. It's the way like the painting kind of, you can see it's kind of like, there's a form there, but the form is not still. You have the form actually floating around and again, I think also every single painting or image I make, it responds to the previous one, what I can do to it, to the next one or to the further one. So that's why maybe a lot of thought process kind of like into it. I'm not sure that AI can generate or not, unless you key in. We had this experimental a couple weeks ago. If you type in my name on the ChatGPT, it says Raymond. Yeah, I want the orange color, and the ChatGPT quite interesting. It will generate images for you, and you will see me standing in front of my painting with a yellow color. It's quite strange. Now me will be like ghosted images, and so the AI one is they are learning all the times. You have to generate. You need to key in the info before they can do anything. So I saw the last sale they did the Chinese ink paintings a few days ago, right? They're quite interesting. They're using a machine, the AI one. They made the Chinese brushstroke. I thought quite interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have covered most of the topics, including the processes and all that, and we're also running a little bit out of time, but just nice for a last question. And for this very important question, both Ian and Raymond, as artist educators, what advice do you have for newer artists or students who wish to pursue painting specifically the art of painting in an ever-digitizing climate?
Actually, there's two questions here. There's about painting and the other one is about digital. I can't answer the big digital one because for me it's like if you want to go that way, it's fine. I think there are always we live in a world where there are different tools. So to me, I'm quite open to the idea of artists working in different tools because it depends on the generation we come from. We know the tool very well. You can experiment and you can discover things that you're interested in. In regards to painting, then I think that actually there's a lot of painters in Singapore. And to me, it's like, yeah, it's I wouldn't say the more the merrier, but if you ask me to encourage if they're studying, then I have to see how. It's not about the technique thing. For me, it's like it's got to go beyond that. They have to have a kind of curiosity, and maybe they also need to. I mean, for me, making paintings is quite an embodied experience. It's quite something that you use your wrist, your hand, and it can be quite a messy thing. So I need to see whether the artist is again looking at their space, the way they work, the condition that they're working, whether it's something that is suitable for them to continue with, or maybe they're better off of doing something else. Don't waste this time with this working with this. So I don't have any sentimental reasons for it. Yeah.
How about you, Raymond? You mentioned that like nowadays a lot more artists have moved on to other formats of expression. and paintings appears to be, I mean, like a physical painting appears to be sort of diminished in a certain way. So what are your thoughts about it?
For me, mostly in my opinion, the lot of school now, the painting kind of like, they probably have less now for students to, if they want to do painting. For me, just want to go back to the digital images and the painting. For me, as a painter, I think if you want to paint, you really need to deal with paint. You really need to kind of like do maybe what the machine cannot do. Sometimes paintings, we are not just painting the images. We have to see and we can kind of push forward maybe the media, maybe the technique, maybe the approach, maybe think of what can you make painting interesting. Painting, not just painting, again, the medium itself, what can you use it and maybe differently. And if you think the digital images, if you can make a painting, print it out, become digital, paint on the digital again, make a painting from digital, you can't back and forth. But you can make use of the digital. If advice for a student, you don't do paintings, go ahead. It's just very different part. You find you are probably quite isolated because you find your classmates, they don't go for that also. Okay.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Raymond. So we have come to the Q&A session. So does anybody have any questions for the artists? We will now open the floor to questions and discussion. Our co-founder Guillaume has a question. Or a comment.
Because Melvin, as you know, we advertise a dialogue between Ian and Raymond. This was not quite a dialogue, this was more Q&A that you manage masterfully. So I would like to hear maybe Ian and Raymond should at least ask each other directly a question without you in the middle. That's my request, if I may.
Thank you. Actually, when I first saw some of the smaller works, I remember seeing them quite some time ago. There was a movie in was it the 90s? It's called Predator. Anybody knows this movie? It's this creatures that sort of like appear and disappear, and they kind of like camouflage into the surrounding. So they kind of reminded me a bit of that. So the word camouflage is quite dominant in my head. And camouflage is about, I don't know, it's like you wear something and then you hide, and then for example you wear this and then you stand on the pond or something, and you might disappear. So do you think that there's this kind of quality in the world that you are dealing with? Especially the more complex one where you can't really tell the image. It's almost like you can't tell the outline, some of them. Some of these you can, but the outline is always like disturbed by something else. It's a general question about space.
I think for me, some of the images, particularly a lot smaller one, I like the images. Again, that's always the issue for me. Is the texture, is the image, or must be the image as image itself. So it has been quite a while for me to kind of like to deal with it. What is image? It's an all blue painting. Can it be an image? So for me, when I started collaging together, I want the image and the surface become one image. Some you let it flow, you look at it, come two images, but still one image. So I again, we go back to the seeing, reading into things. I like things to be sometimes quite complicated, sometimes quite simple. And also, in this exhibition, for me, I treat it as kind of like, I want to get close to drawing rather than paintings. So the stencil cuts out, the outline of shape, and also really physically cut out the thing, another shape based on another shape kind of things. That's why I want to have a feel of drawing rather than just paintings. See making sense of it?
Yeah, you talk about, I like what you say about, is it trying to merge?
Much too, yeah, to
Yeah, and you say something like, you're not even sure what is this image.
yeah.
Which I think is
Even though now.
interesting because it's like you almost don't want to clarify the image. Is that
Yeah.
true? Yeah. So you want things to be. I mean, if you think about, it's like you can't make up your mind or something.
I think
Not in a bad way.
I think it's interesting because a lot of time when I make works, I don't want to have too much things like the outcome in mind. For me, it's the way I work. If I got too fixed, I cannot move to the next one. So I always have a lot of possibilities all in place. At least then I can decide this finish, this continue. That's the way I work.
But perhaps maybe that's also about abstraction, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, true. Yes.
Because you don't want to arrive at
Yeah.
that clarification.
Yeah, you travel hopefully then to arrive. Yeah. That very good. Yeah. No, I'm fine.
Okay, so thank you, Ian and Raymond, once again. So anybody in the audience have any questions? Yeah, please feel free to just ask. Yeah, sure.
Just now you mentioned about you're quite prone to apply new digital tools, whereas Raymond not. So what is the thought of NFT?
Did you say that I'm more prone to using digital tools?
So you say you're open to new tools.
I'm open to it. Yeah, I did some small digital drawings. I did read about NFT, but I didn't really understand it, to be honest with you. And I've seen some people set up that space for NFT, and I'm a bit slow to it. I'm still trying to comprehend what's the point of that. So that's my response to your question.
Same.
I think it's the same because normally when you're a painter, you really be real things. And with NFT, for me, I said I also not quite understand how it works yet. Again,
Some of the education as an educator in last week, so the school
Yes, there are talks, and they are kind of special. I mean, it's been only a couple of years, so I don't know what several specializing in this area. I think people do share about these ideas, but I think we need to wait for a couple of years for people practicing it before certain interesting things can happen. Yeah.
yeah,
Or maybe you need to wait for it to fail.
yeah,
And something really interesting happen. It's just I always find that in a lot of the new things, it has to mess up, and something has to go wrong before something interesting can happen.
It's the same like a painting. A lot of you need some way to go wrong, like you need to go there. Sometimes you deliberately can't make it go wrong. When you get stuck out, so you need to kind of go in even further and make it even wrong.
So you do this on some heroes that get related to go forward.
Yeah, I think so. In many other things, everything's more or less, everything in life. Yeah. So with painting is the same thing. You cannot go in first that you get it right. You need to go to many stages. And a lot of many stages, like the process one, a lot of people cannot see. What you're seeing is more like the actual product. Yeah. Yeah, good for him. Even his, it's actual copyright. Even the actual original artwork. Because it's, David Hurst, like everyone. He make an original, then he will make an NFT. Once he sell an NFT, he will destroy his original. He asks you to make a choice, like whether you can choose the real one or not the real one. But it's,
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you, Ian. I'm curious to hear your personal or professional take-ons as to what distinguishes great paintings from good paintings.
I think this is a really difficult question. Again, we don't want to generalize things also. As a painter, sometimes you can see something interesting in other people's work. Maybe you can also see how the artist try to tackle the issue, the problem. But sometimes a painting has something to say. Also, not necessarily going to be a great paintings or good paintings. So it's only the newspaper or a critic they start to kind of generalize, says, oh yeah, this is a good painting, then it become history. But for painters, for us, for me, sometimes you realize something is interesting. For me, interesting is good enough already. Okay?
I think this question is about visiting the museum and looking at the real object of art. Because sometimes we do talk a lot about art, or read a lot about art, but until you visit the galleries of the museum, then you can actually see the thing. And then a discussion about some of these what your question is, can take place. I think greatness and goodness is a very tricky thing because something that's not so good can become great at some point. It's really about, I talked about the personal in the sense that sometimes you are an artist because trouble has happened to you. Some sort of trouble has happened to you. And that trouble has sort of like implied into the making of the world. And this making of the world is not like a one-off, it's there's a history that's being involved for that search. And again, I'm generalizing is the idea of this question that you're asking me. And to me, this is only one small aspect. But at the end of the day, you look at a work, it's really simply not just about aesthetic qualities. There sometimes could be even imperfections. There are some classical works where the perspective is wrong, the proportion of the body is wrong. But that make it great because there's something about the sum of the parts that come together. So I will stop here. But I always say, go to the museum, see the work, and then you decide for yourself what you want to stay with and what you don't want to stay with.
Hi, I have a question for Raymond. It's with regards to the ideal process between the works on the walls and the works on the table. I remember the works on the table, I think they're part of the works that we saw in 1961 that you were doing through COVID. And that was, you were painting or making them every day in that sense, and it had that type of processuality. I'm just wondering how is then the process for the larger works, and what is the end product? Because you were talking about process and end product and how sometimes the process is quite hidden. So then I'm just wondering in terms of the things on the works on the table where that daily ritual is part of the process. And so how does that then compare to these that are more, I don't know if the question is very broad, but maybe we could take one work as an example. Maybe the work at the end, for example, and then the ones on the table, as I remember them, as a full body of works from COVID, right?
Those works on the table, since the last exhibition you saw, the work on papers continues. And then later on, I make a larger sizes. And after the larger sizes, and then we kind of have discussion with our porters. We're going to do these exhibitions, and then I think about the space. Then I begin to make some bigger books. They're quite interesting. The two the left and the right one. Which was I only make them since January. January after I came back from London. Those two was the last two paintings I made, and up to now I haven't made much yet. Not even the work on paper yet. I just kind of slow down a bit. And after London trip, I came back January 1st, and I went into studio. I began to change the color palette. I work on the floor, I don't work on the table, so things always on the floor. And I saw those existing cutout I have got. I thought I want to make it build the images further. So I started rolling color on it, and then it said, for example, like orange, not happy, you come in the next day, you roll yellow again, so you shift it. Actually, you got yellow, orange together. And then I got stencil, I want to keep the form. And then I draw outline on the form like using a stencil very lightly. Then I use it like metallic, kind of scraping around the shape. They kind of suggest the kind of like movement, kind of things. And then for this one, you'll find that the color will be a bit warmer now compared to some of the color before UK. For this one, I said myself, I use a whole type of yellow. For me, it's just repeat the shape, change the composition. We use template behind the front, kind of like moving around, keep rolling using a roller. And then every so often I will increase a bit of blue. Like the yellow increase the blue, you change tones. Then I increase more and more. That's how you get a different kind of greenish kind of blue. Yeah. So for me, the process is also very similar to the small one because it's just bigger, that's all. Even the smaller one, sometimes I also work on top. It's kind of like until the whole thing disappears. And then you roll one color and then you restart again. Yeah. So, and then start it again. Does that answer your questions?
I think that I'm just wondering if there was a kind of ritualistic element to this, for example, as a question of process, versus that as having an end goal in creating a singular work.
Yeah, I think for me when I was making, I didn't think that much. I just want to separate them. This is work on paper, this work on canvas. For me, the work on canvas, these images also they come and goes. That's why you can see a lot of layers and layers and layers. And I sent, before it was quite red, no green or yellow. And I sent this image to the UK friends. And I said, what do you think on this one? And then he replied, the color doesn't generate the emotion yet. So then I come into the studio, I continue working until there's a certain kind of maybe the emotions there. And then I think also because of the yellow, they all finish also. This is how I stop. Sometimes I also set rules like I need to use this whole tab when this whole jar finished and the painting is finished. So I set a little bit less, kind of like to see how. Then if the whole yellow finished, that means that the process will end there. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just sometime in the studio. That's what the studio is there for. You play. If it's too too finished also sometimes you go too far. So that's why the in between is quite important. You get there, you don't want to get there, you want to get there, but you don't want to get there.
Why do you use the fluorescent, we call it iridescent color?
Yeah, fluorescent.
Like bounces like that.
Yeah.
Why do you use that?
I think because I don't use them before, and I bought a couple of tabs, you know, on my table. So and I also use a metallic. Metallic also quite difficult to use. They possible.
Yeah, I find it difficult.
Yeah.
I tried using it, and it's confusing for me.
Yeah,
But
it's
maybe that's why you like it. You know, it kind of confuses you.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I find in metallic color sometimes it's not like it's too solid.
Yeah.
Because it reflects, but then you feel that there's the way the space is giving it space.
Yeah.
But maybe you blend it. So it's the way you saw like next to
I think some of the color I use it, for example, the orange one, the metallic is you see it's a gray, but it's a metallic color, silver, and I didn't mix with other color. It's just metallic. Particularly metallic translucent, you scrape it, lay over another color, it changes tones. Now you can see the gray is there, but it's not going to be gray. It's going to be just metallic.
Yeah, I guess also that brings back to the idea of your interest in that image that's not really coming together, or maybe even the idea of the space that is not there yet. Okay, it's always going to arrive.
Yeah.
But also when you move, it changes.
Yeah.
I like the microphone sound.
Is there a particular time of day or a mood that you have to be in to produce your best work? And if so, are there any rituals that you do in order to get yourself into the best headspace to do it?
What is the best time for me? For me, the best time is when you have an exhibition, you need to prepare something, and you got to do some things. For me, it doesn't matter the timing. Once I get into the studio, I look at the things around it. You got to work. So daytime, okay. Nighttime also okay. Midnight, 3 a.m. also can. Yeah, so there's no particular time. Once you're in the studio, you can work anytime. Yeah, I think this is the way I work. Particularly, a lot of times you look at the painting unfinished, you want to do something. Once you start doing something, you generate another one, so you cannot go home also. So the next day you come here again, you restart the whole process again. Yeah, so anytime it works for me.
Yeah, I think for me it's the morning. Early morning is good. Actually, I just need 2 hours. I calculated the best energy I can spend is 2 hours. After that, I need to do something else. Otherwise, down from there. And also the mornings, coming in fresh into the studio, the great thing for me is to always see stuff that I've been working on, or even things, especially things that I thought were finished. Because a lot of time the real test is the next day when I come in. Then I realized that, okay, it's not really working. Because I thought it was great work of art. Yeah, I thought it was a great work of art yesterday, but it's not very good.
Yeah. Any idea why Ian said they only spend 2 hours in the studio? And do you know why? Because after 2 hours, the arm will destroy because going too fast already.
And Ian, referring to what you just said about 2 hours you spend a day when you work on a painting, do you look at the whole thing in that 2 hours, how much you were achieving? Do you look at the whole perspective, how to sort of progress with your painting, or do you just do sections only?
It
in that
changes.
2 hours?
No, it changes all the time. When I work, it's like I'm moving to and fro. It's quite physical when I'm moving, and I don't really think so much about. For me, I'm constantly looking and then coordinating with mixing colors, painting. It's almost quite unconscious, a lot of these things. But it's like a balancing act when I'm doing it. I can prepare some things, but when it starts to go onto the surface, right, that's when things happen. What I mean by things happen is that the whole coordination aspect comes in. You know, it's almost like you're playing an instrument. You know, you don't tell yourself, or you're speaking. I don't tell myself, I'm going to talk this first second, this construct this second. It just comes out, and you know, and it's a bit like that analogy. Or you're playing an instrument and you're kind of like, you don't tell yourself whether you're going to put your fingers here or there, because you've been practicing it. So after a while, it becomes second nature. So that 2 hours is that flurry of just doing a couple of different things and trying to get maybe one word going. And I realized that for me, more than 2 hours, sometimes I just start to not be able to see properly because your eyes get tired and what you think you are seeing is not
there.
It's not accurate.
It's scary.
Because actually the ultimate test for the artwork is when there is no more text. You come into the gallery or the museum, you see the thing. The audience, the audience sees it, and it's a stranger that sees the work, and the work has to do its thing. Yeah. So that's why I talk about this idea of trying to sometimes not recognize my work for a while and then come back to it.
Yeah, I have a question for Raymond. In terms of color-wise, actually, do you have like in mind when you start doing the painting, like what color you have in mind? Like, is it you are going to do a warm color, or it just come, you know, as a way, you know, mix and match, you know, and then come up with a, you know.
I think it comes as a manner. Because
It looks like I actually got a lot of colors, like you know what to do in mind, but I don't. I just look at the things I've got, look at the images, maybe you know the surface and the color, see they match or not. But again, you even though you think you prepare your plans, but it doesn't come out as what you wish. So for me, it's like think, but don't think too much. Also, and then do, and then see how. After 2 hours, can leave the studio and come and have a look again. That's how you make moves. Because the more you work, the less spontaneity it becomes. Yeah, so something depends on what you want. Colors wise is I'm trying to use some of my colors. But trust me, all the color I chose, they take it works. They know this one. Yeah. Okay.
We got two more questions.
So I wanted to ask about the spontaneity. In the work of paper, obviously you can be very spontaneous, and you work almost like you put something down, you can work on quite spontaneously. On the work on canvas, that's a different matter. So I was just wondering whether your new works on canvas, you feel like you made a breakthrough, almost like you managed to create that spontaneity in a similar way to the one on paper.
Sorry, can you say again?
You didn't hear?
I heard a lot of noise from the mic.
Mic check.
Okay, so I'm gonna repeat quickly.
Yeah, you can talk.
No, I'm
Now serious.
sorry. I'm just thinking the difference between the work on paper is that you can be very spontaneous with that because you've got all the paper there, you can work really quickly, you can make decisions quite fast. But that's quite different with the work on canvas, and I mean, these are new paintings, and I wonder, how do you feel? Do you feel like it's a breakthrough where you managed to create that spontaneity on the canvas this time? I haven't seen work on canvas for a while of yours, so that's why.
Yeah, I don't normally work on canvas. I feel closer to papers. Even though when I was in London doing my studying, I tend to glue Japanese rice paper onto a canvas. Yeah, I work from there. So canvases, I don't normally use much. So that's why the last exhibition also work on papers, and so it is maybe very rare I use canvas. But the way I treat, I mean, making the painting, the treatment should be the same as the work on paper. Maybe the subconscious kind of like must come into being when you're making the work, and it cannot be so fixed on one area. The survey has to be all over, and every single part must have equal attention. So with the work on paper, sometimes you just got this focus, you know, because of the cut-out shape. Yeah, but when it comes to canvas one, for me, as I said, partly I'm using on canvas, but I'm just making the work, just keep making. Take it easy, just having fun. Otherwise, you don't get the spontaneity. You're too serious, you roll too much, you're too big and too heavy, and things will be too solid in one area. So you need to be like artists, you be all over.
Right, anybody have any more questions? Okay. One last question? Okay.
This is a question for both Raymond and Ian. I have been trying to introduce enjoying abstract arts to many of my friends, but they feel too afraid to come to an exhibition to see abstract arts because they think they don't know how to appreciate, they don't know what to look at. And I know it's no general answer for everyone, because for me, I like abstract art because it gives me the freedom to evoke inner feelings or trigger a certain memory. So some painting will affect me more, some less. But for other people, they're all different. But is it a starting point you can suggest to somebody totally not really used to abstract art? They felt they can't recognize something. How do they start to enjoy abstract art as a first step?
I think sometimes you also cannot force them, sometimes you also cannot tell them what to do, what they like. It has to come from inside. That's why abstraction art, you cannot teach people how to like the things, unless that's why they have some people doing figurative, some people do survey, some people do abstract. But what I can advise, they should study collecting art, abstraction art. Maybe they will kind of get into it more, and then try to get involved with the circus. If not, there's no way you can, tell them what they should like. the impossible. Correct?
Yeah, I think kind of answered it. I mean, for me, I think all art is abstract. What is abstract? It's almost like you take from somewhere. I mean, if I'm a realist painter or I make realist drawing, I'm translating from the reality to something else. So to me, it's like all art is abstract. But of course, it's a very extreme idea that I'm saying, but it kind of like works for me. But to answer your question about the audience, there are so many kinds of audience. The thing is that I guess you are talking also in a relationship, like you and your friends. So you are an audience bringing another audience to something, right? Because you're not talking about an artist trying to convince someone. An artist, sometimes you don't want to convince anyone. It's like it's quite you can't do that. And I guess maybe they need to be curious, and I think they need to just want to come. They need to see the real thing, as I always talk about. See the real object of art before they make any decision. And looking at work as I listen to music is something that you take time to engage in it. And sometimes actually for me, good works of art is hard to talk about. The fact that we're actually talking about art today is a strange phenomenon. It's hard to talk about art actually. And we are trying to find words all the time to get closer to something, but the key word is closer. And also, abstract art deals with questions rather than answers. But again, I'm talking very philosophically here. I don't know how helpful it is. They still need to go and see the work. And maybe, like I say, maybe they will dislike it in the beginning. And then maybe time will tell. Maybe they will never like it, and that's fine.
Anyone has the last question? Feel free. Okay, so in this case, yeah, thank you very much, Raymond. Thank you very much, Ian. And I think our co-founder June has some announcement to make.
Thank you, Melvin, and yes, thank you, Ian, and thank you, Raymond. I would like just to come back, in fact, on this last point you mentioned, Ian, how time will tell. I thought I really related well to the question from the lady about good versus great. This year I'll be celebrating 40 years since I bought my first painting as a collector. That was the painting that's at the foundation of my collection. And it's going to be 9 years since we co-founded with Art Porters. One thing I learned is a lot of the difference between good and great is not necessarily in the artwork, it's in the viewer side. So with time, we learn to discover the greatness in the work. The work is alive, and a lot of the even subconscious energy of the artist is released over time. I see this clearly when we have rotating exhibitions, usually about 6 weeks or 2 months, and especially during COVID, I was almost every day in the gallery. I could see exhibitions every day, and I learned to like and like more. Of course, I started from a point of liking because I contributed to choosing the artist and the exhibition. Certainly with the Raymond's exhibition is such an example. I missed the first 2 weeks of the exhibition because I was out of town. I'd seen the works before and seen online, but now every day I learn to appreciate them more. So what I thought were good works, I'm discovering their greatness. It's being released, it's being diffused a moment at a time. And incidentally, the only difference between the museum and the gallery is, here it's free for everybody, regardless of citizenship and immigration status. and the works are available for collection. For further release into greatness into your system at home. And I recommend this, it's both good for the soul. And on this note, Raymond's exhibition is open on the 10th, next Sunday. So please come back, bring friends, and of course, if you want to collect, Nelly's colleague Perline, you want to stand up and wave. If you stand up, people have more chance to see you. Yes, thank you, Perline. We'll be hosting a closing party next Saturday, the 18th, featuring a young musician, Dr. Raj Kamal. Maybe you want to stand up and so you will release the musical version of these artworks.
I designed a theme based on the primordial patterns. So it's a 6-minute vibrational sound together with live guitar improvisation, and followed by a 50-minute just elevator music, kind of jazz, like jazz music. I hope you can enjoy it. It's next Saturday, guys.
Next Saturday PM, and this should be, $225 per ticket, and we're making it free.
Now free. Sign up today is free.
Yes, sign up today is free. Yes, we might sell out this. Yes. So actually, if you've signed up for today's event, you will find yourself added to the Apporters mailing list. If you did not, you can scan this QR code. You can get a catalog of Raymond's exhibition. You can sign up for the mailing list. You can follow us on Instagram and all that. Please, all of you, be ambassadors for Raymond, for Apporters. If you took photos today, please post them, make stories, tag Raymond, tag Apporters. All this is good for to reveal further the greatness of the works.